Hey guys, welcome in to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I am your host. Tyler is absent today. Unfortunately, has a little bit of a situation going on in the family. So I appreciate all your well wishes towards the Shun family. But joining me today is Alex. Alex, how you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. So all what best wishes to Tyler and his family. But this brings me back to when I still used to record in a closet last year when it was just me and Steven doing the
Yeah,
pregame shows together. And then Tyler would join us for the postgame show. But yeah, back to business.
good times, man. Good times in the closet. I forgot about that. But a little bit of an upgrade down there for Alex for sure. So we're going to dive right into this matchup. I think, the Cleveland Browns present a very interesting opponent. And, we'll dive in right to the first kind of big storylines as we always do. Alex, what is the biggest storyline of this game that you are kind of focusing on?
Yeah, I think the biggest storyline for this game is all things else being equal with the Browns is what level of Baker Mayfield we get or what kind of Baker Mayfield we're getting.
Yeah.
Because I think you know what Justin Herbert is going to give you with the Chargers, even with this tough Browns defense. But, the real, X factor, but it is the most important part of their team. It's not something that's low key, right? He's been really rough, was particularly rough last week against the Vikings, missed a lot of throws he shouldn't have. Then it comes out this week. He has been playing with a torn labrum, which is not easy. Plus, they're still trying to mix Odell back into the mix coming off of the torn ACL last year. So, as much as, I think they're going to try to funnel the offense through Chubb and Hunt. I think what version we get of Baker this game kind of determines the outcome because I do think these are two teams that, all things being equal, are pretty even. I might give a slight edge to the Browns when they're at full health, but what Baker Mayfield is going to be able to do as a quarterback is going to matter in this game, at least when it comes to making those clutch throws late, right? Like in the case of, say, the Dallas game, right? Zeke and Pollard still rushed for 200 yards, but you still had to have Dak make those clutch throws when it came time to. So I think
Right.
Baker will still have to do something similar in this game if the Browns are going to win. So it depends on what kind of Baker we get this game.
Yeah, I think your assessment overall of the rosters is pretty spot on. It feels like both teams have, star players here, depth players there, rookies there that are all making an impact. So it is kind of interesting to consider that this could come down to, frankly, who has the healthier quarterback. And so Baker's going to play. Apparently, he's not planning on sitting or missing any games. So unless it gets significantly worse or deteriorates, he's not going to have surgery, which is probably necessary to fix that. But it is his left shoulder, so it's not his throwing shoulder, obviously. But Dan Orlovsky was on ESPN talking about how that can kind of impact things, and really, from what I understand from his breakdown or his explanation, is that it makes it difficult to kind of go through your progressions when you're trying to read from right to left or left to right. It just kind of hinders you, gives you a little bit of a hitch, which is what he thinks he saw last week, particularly against the Vikings. I haven't watched that film. I'll probably watch it tomorrow or Saturday ahead of the game, but apparently it was not pretty on Saturday, missing a bunch of throws, missed Odell apparently on two or three big chunk play opportunities at least. So yeah, I think that's a good call.
Yeah, so it's just going to be really interesting to see kind of what they get, and like you said, it's going to be interesting to see what he brings to the table, but maybe not necessarily deciding because of the two backs that they have. And we'll get to the injury reports for both teams later. But I think the injuries for the Browns, just looking at the kind of graveyard of guys that they have out right now, that's going to be something that factors into the game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, there's basically nothing to talk about the injury report for the Chargers. So we're basically going to be talking about the Browns, which is going to be interesting. I think there are a couple obvious storylines that I think we'll probably get to later on in this matchup. But for me, the storyline that I'm going to be focusing in on it is how Joe Lombardi makes some adjustments and gets Keenan Allen and Mike Williams back involved at least a greater level than they were this past game. So we've seen them kind of focus in on a certain player or a certain position group from time to time. And the Raiders were they were like flat out bracketing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams like basically on every other play. So like they clearly had a plan to not let those two beat them. Of course, the Chargers were able to beat them in a different way. So I'm curious to see how Mike Williams in particular gets involved this week because the Cleveland corners outside of Denzel Ward don't really scare me. Then again, they had a Meek Robertson, the slot corner, covering him last week, and there were some one-on-one opportunities, and Justin Herbert just did not go his way. So I'm curious to see if that's kind of a point of emphasis this week for Williams in particular. Maybe getting back on the right track, scoring a touchdown, getting 100 yards, whatever the case may be. So I'm interested to see what kind of adjustments Lombardi makes to the game plan this week.
Yeah, and I think this is the perfect week to get Mike Williams and Keenan Allen back involved. Greg Newsome's going to be out, who's, kind of Cleveland's, at least one of their starting corners at this point. Plus, Denzel Ward is dealing with a neck injury, which is pretty brutal because that's sort of who you would think prototypically they would place on either Allen or Williams at any given time. Probably Allen, given the fact that Denzel Ward sort of struggled with bigger receivers, so they'd probably leave that to somebody else when it comes to Mike Williams. But I think what the Chargers really showed you on Monday night is they are sort of a pick your poison team, right? If you're going to hold Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, to double coverage every play, and they only get 40 yards, fine. We're going to gash you with Austin Eckler and Larry Roundtree, or, we're going to get the tight ends involved when it comes to Steven Anderson and Donald Parham and Jared Cook, right? All sort of cooking on Monday night. So I think that's, the Chargers will let you take away who you take away, and then just work with the rest of the guys that are open on a specific play. And I think that's going to be really challenging for this Browns secondary. It would be less so if, the Browns were healthy, particularly in the secondary. But, considering they're not healthy right now, that's really, I think, the type of thing that the Chargers can feast on. And, one of the things I think lacked on Monday night was Justin Herbert or Joe Lombardi sort of being like, hey, Damon Arnett's down. Let's just continue to throw to Mike Williams over and over again. I think that should have been a bigger emphasis a little bit. So I think in this game where the Cleveland corners are going to be out before the game, I think that definitely calls for getting Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and pretty much all those guys involved.
Yeah, it was, interesting watching the film today because it was like, Keenan Allen would clearly be the primary read, or Jared Cook would clearly be the primary read. And then you see on the opposite side, Mike Williams is creating some separation on a potential go route or a potential slant on Amik Robertson, who is, their backup slot corner. He's not even their starting slot corner. And it's just like, I understand like why Justin Herbert's not going that way
Right.
because the concept is dictating it to not go that way. But I just kind of wish sometimes that like Herbert would come to the line and be like, okay, I have one-on-one with a guy who's 7 inches taller than this corner who's guarding him. Like, let's go to him. Like, let's force feed him just a little bit. So I think that is, something to focus on this week. And I'm glad you mentioned Donald Parham. I don't know if you were going to mention him later on in this episode, so I hope I'm not spoiling anything. But he played really, really well over the last couple of weeks, and he's flashing some very positive signs as a blocker. And this week we saw him get more involved as a pass catcher, had a really nice touchdown, created some good separation on that route. And then he had a short catch that he shook Trayvon Merrick out of his shoes, man. Like he's showing some explosive traits as a tight end. And I know he's a free agent after this year, but I'm fully okay with Donald Parham being in the tight end one potentially as soon as next year for this team.
Yeah, no, I think Donald Parham honestly kind of will be in that conversation. All things will kind of shake out as they do, whether it comes to Jared Cook and whether he'll be back, or Steven Anderson, or what they want to do with Trey McKitty at some point. But I think Donald Parham, particularly after last week, particularly after all the signs we saw last year, is really kind of gunning for that tight end one role in the future. And it's really exciting to see just, the main takeaway for Monday night for me is just a 6'8" guy can move like that in the NFL. Like he really is like if LeBron decided to play tight end back in the day. And so, I think Donald Parham is just going to be a really exciting guy to watch, particularly these next few weeks. I do think they will start to use him a little bit more just because they sort of found that worked in the Raiders game, and particularly in the red zone, just hey, all the
Yeah.
tall guys get on the field and we'll pick whichever one is open, because I don't think in sort of that limited space that many people can cover all three of those guys or have the physical capability of doing so, particularly in the red zone.
Yeah, that touchdown that he had that Herbert threw to Parham was really interesting because you mentioned the big guys, right? It was Parham on a dig, and then it was Williams on a dig right behind him. So
Yeah.
it was almost like, okay, if Parham's not open, I'm going to go right back to Williams, the other big tall guy in the red zone. So it was really fun concept to see. All right, we mentioned the injury report. Let's get to those right now. Like I said, not much to cover with the Chargers. Really, the only injury of note is that Justin Jackson has gone from limited to did not practice today. Apparently, he's dealing with a groin injury. That guy just, every few weeks he has a, lower body core injury, which is just, super frustrating.
Mhm.
But do you think Jackson ends up playing? And if he doesn't, do you have any confidence in Joshua Kelly being that third back this week?
I have confidence in Joshua Kelly being the third back because I don't think he'll be asked to do much. I think if Justin
Right.
Jackson's out, then they're pretty much going to go through Eckler and Roundtree, much like they did Monday night. Particularly that they're on a short week this week, so I think that would kind of mean that they stick to their bread and butter. Maybe
Yeah.
they'll. The scary thing is if they need Joshua Kelly to do special teams blocking, because as we saw last year, that doesn't always work. But
Yeah.
that's really the only place where I'd be concerned. As far as him being the third running back in the rotation, I think that's fine if Justin Jackson's out for a week. Although I would like to see Justin Jackson on the field because he sort of had some moments against the Raiders, but just kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. And so it would be nice to see kind of the Justin Jackson game if he were to kind of be the second back this week still. But I think Roundtree for the moment, at least when it comes between the tackles, has sort of taken that lead at this point over Justin Jackson. But I'm not too nervous about Joshua Kelly if he has to play. But I just really hope Justin Jackson can shake the injury bug and play this week, because I think he would be just another kind of weapon that the Chargers can throw at teams when they're deciding to double cover players or deciding which players to focus on in terms of the Browns defense.
Yeah, I think Joshua Kelly will play. He'll get some reps. I don't know how many touches he'll get, but the thing where losing Justin Jackson hurts the most is like you mentioned earlier as a receiver, because Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree don't really present much of the same kind of element
Right.
as a pass catcher. So I'm a little worried about that, and especially now they have, like, Austin Eckler is obviously capable of running between the tackles, but now they don't have that kind of well-rounded change of pace, because that's what Justin Jackson is, at his best. He can do kind of a lot of everything, whereas Larry Roundtree and Joshua Kelly both are to me, they're in between the tackles runners. They're not necessarily perimeter runners. They're not pass catching backs. So it is going to be different this week. Maybe they choose to elevate Darius Bradwell instead. I don't know, but I do kind of expect Joshua Kelly to make his debut this week. I guess we should also talk about Chris Harris, because he has been apparently trending positive. He's been a full participant today and yesterday, although yesterday they kind of just had a walkthrough. Do you expect Chris Harris to make his return to the field this week?
I feel like I expect it this week. It would make sense. I don't know exactly how many snaps he'll play because they'll sort of probably mix that up with Devon Campbell and a bunch of the other guys that have played,
Yeah.
significant snaps since Chris Harris has been hurt. And I think they'll also want to be careful with it since it is a shoulder injury. So I definitely think there's a better chance that he'll play this week than sort of the, just kind of going into Monday Night Football week, where it was sort of up in the air the whole time. But it doesn't seem like there's really been any setbacks, though, considering how the Chargers kind of rolled with Justin Jones and Kenneth Murray.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if Chris Harris was placed on IR just randomly Sunday morning. But I do think he will play. I think this team has a use for him, particularly when it comes to tackling in the run game, which is going to be important in this one with
Yeah.
Chubb and Hunt. So I think that they don't necessarily need Chris Harris out there to win, but I think this is a game where if you can have him, you'd really like to have, at the very least, Chris Harris's tackling ability on, say, 10 or 15 snaps, whatever he can play.
Yeah, I think that is how I feel as well. I think whether he's limited or not, this is a game where you want to see him, and more so next week with Lamar Jackson and kind of the keeper game that he brings to the table. But the good news is that we've seen some good things from Alohi Gilman. We've seen some good things from Tavon Campbell. So it's not super necessary that Chris Harris plays, 100% of the snaps, perhaps like it would have been at the start of the season. So I expect there to be a good rotation back there because those guys have kind of earned those extra snaps. But yeah, it seems like Chris Harris is definitely trending in the right direction this week. All right, let's get to the Browns injuries because it is a lengthy report for the
This is
Cleveland
where you got
Browns
to
this
sing.
week. I think we should start with the big one, literally in this case, which is Jedrick Wills. Jedrick Wills has been dealing with an ankle injury. He injured that ankle in the first game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and has really kind of been dealing with it ever since, but he's been able to play through it. When I interviewed Henry Ettinger, he said that Wills has kind of been a shell of himself, which kind of is reflected in his Pro Football Focus grade, but he's only allowed 7 pressures this season. So how big of a loss would Jedrick Wills be for the Browns this week, do you think?
I think he's a pretty big loss. I mean, just based on what we saw with Joey Bosa, what we've been seeing from him in the last 2 weeks in particular. I think that you need to have someone to protect the quarterback, especially given that Baker dealing with his torn labrum
Yeah.
probably isn't going to be quite as mobile as he usually is, sort of, taking off to run out to the sides of the pocket. So I sort of think that that's going to be key. What level he's playing at is going to be big, but I think there might be a little bit of a trade-off for them where they go, well, if we're going to get a really bad level from Jedrick Wills, is it worse than putting a healthy tackle out there? I'm not too familiar with the Cleveland Browns' depth when it comes to that, but I think that's going to have to be a conversation that they have this week, especially because you're going against, a more elite pass rush, I would say, than you played, say, against Minnesota when they played last week with Jedrick Wills in the lineup. So that's something to be conscious about. But at the same time, I do think because it's the Chargers and it's because Joey Bosa is out there, they're probably going to put Jedrick Wills out there at least for one more week, just out of necessity to see what he
Yeah.
has. And if he can't give you what you need, probably the guys behind it won't either. So I think they're going to probably take the chance this week.
Yeah, that's always a tough one for, dealing with this kind of thing because their swing tackle is also on this injury report, dealing with a triceps injury. That's Chris Hubbard. So he was limited in practice on Wednesday and then was downgraded to did not practice at all today. So it certainly doesn't seem like he's going to play, which means if Jedrick Wills can't go, then you would be seeing, and we would be seeing James Hudson, the former Cincinnati Bearcat, getting the start at left tackle for the Browns against Joey Bosa. So again, Joey's not, primarily rushing from the left tackle. They'll move him around, right? He rushes mostly from the right side, but they are moving him around. And so having your fourth tackle go up against this game, and even Uchenna Nwosu is capable, Kyler Fackrell is capable. So I think this is a huge deal. And similar to how we're seeing with, Storm Norton, the Browns will be able to help whoever is playing at left tackle, right, with chips and things like that. But going from Jedrick Wills to James Hudson, who I liked coming out of the draft, but is a project, that's a big step back for sure.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about somebody like Storm Norton at least played in 5, 6 NFL games last year, and kind of has that experience or had that experience going into this year versus James Hudson. I mean, this is really his first year, right? He's kind of being thrown to the wolves
Yeah.
as sort of a more project developmental tackle kind of a guy. So I think there's a bit of a different dynamic there just in terms of maybe the experience Norton had. But yeah, I definitely think they'll try to help him in whatever way you can. I just think that the Chargers kind of mix it up so much to the point where it's like, okay, well, one play you'll have to be dealing with Joey Bosa, the next play you'll have to be dealing with Jerry Tillery.
Right.
Then 2 plays later we'll bring Derwin James on a rush and get crazy. So like the Chargers have sort of been like that in terms of their rush the past few weeks. So I think that that's something that Brandon Staley definitely wants to focus in on, and I think that the Chargers are going to say, "Hey, you're playing your fourth tackle. Well, we're going to make that look like the problem that it is."
Yeah. like imagine in this game if we were dealing with Trey Pipkins as opposed to Storm Norton, like that would be a disaster. So if you missed Tyler's breakdown, he did do a breakdown on all the blitzes and the ways that the Chargers got after Derek Carr, which was a really fantastic thing to watch. They brought some very creative stuff, and I expect them to do that this week against Baker as well. Flipping to the opposite side of the ball for the Browns, they have Jadeveon Clowney and Takk McKinley both listed as DNPs. Takk McKinley is listed with an ankle/knee, and Jadeveon Clowney, let me make sure I get this right. Jadeveon Clowney is listed with an elbow injury. So Clowney hurt his elbow in the game against the Vikings. Apparently, he came back and was able to finish it. I don't really know when Takk McKinley got his injury, but not having one of those players is a big deal. Potentially not having both of them is a huge deal, because if both of those players are out, then you can really, focus in on Myles Garrett, chip him as much as you possibly want to, double team him, and, slide coverage his way. So it's an interesting thing to keep an eye on this week, particularly tomorrow, of course, as the injury reports come out as finalized. But not having Clowney and potentially not having Clowney and McKinley is a big deal for the Browns.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal, especially given how Jadeveon Clowney's played this season. It sort of has looked like a bit of a resurgence for him next to Myles Garrett. And, if you don't have him, I think the Browns pass rush will still be okay. Like it's hard to screw up pass rush when you have the best pass rusher in the league in Myles Garrett. But I do think they'll need some more from the rest of their lineup. And Jadeveon Clowney would sort of be a big blow to that. Just going through some of the other names that stuck out to me on the injury report, I think the guy to watch in terms of, I think he will play when we talk about Denzel Ward. He was a limited participant in practice this week with a neck injury. I think he was a DNP yesterday and then a limited practice today.
Yeah.
So I think he's huge because they already have Greg Newsome out and are dealing with a lot in the secondary. So if he doesn't play, I think that's a really big break for both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Sort of thought that they would kind of feast in this game anyway, especially after sort of the Raiders bracketing strategy didn't play out last week. But, this is the kind of game where I think they need Denzel Ward to at least get a couple stops on Keenan Allen. And if you don't have him, then I feel like it could be a really long day. And when we talk about Keenan Allen and his drops on Monday night, like this is the perfect opportunity, given the state of the Cleveland secondary, for a pretty big bounce back game for him, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's, spot on, especially if Greg Newsome is out, they're going to need Denzel Ward because they don't really have anybody else. The other injuries as well that I wanted to talk about were David Njoku, who has not practiced this week with a knee injury. And then their all-pro center, JC Treader, has not practiced with a knee/back injury. So apparently they're optimistic that Treader will play this week. Of course, that would be a huge deal because I happen to think that when the Browns are healthy, they are the best offensive line in the league. And so if they're down Wills and Treader, I think that obviously is a significant step back. And then Njoku, he's not as big of a loss because they have Austin Hooper. They still have Harrison Bryant. So I think they'd be able to pick up the slack. But Njoku is kind of that yards after catch athlete tight end that I think could, potentially make things a little more difficult for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I definitely think Njoku is going to be a big one in this game. Just given, his nature and the fact that he draws attention. I think Njoku is one to watch for this game. Treader, I think, will be interesting to watch just because, like you said, it's really hard to play without your center and your starting tackle. Yeah. Like, the Chargers do not want to be in that position themselves, which is why it's been so important that on the other hand, so dealing on the side cannot be fun to deal with quite at all. And so I definitely think we'll kind of see what happens. And like you said, Chris Hubbard, that swing tackle, also a DNP today with that triceps injury. So they're just sort of going through it right now in terms of their injuries. And it's one of the reasons that when we talk about this injury report as a whole, we'll get to our picks a little bit later, but I sort of felt bullish on the Browns coming into this week until I saw the injury report. And we'll get to what those picks are later.
Yeah, I can't believe how many names are on this list, and it's not like
it's like a Chargers injury report.
I mean, you see like a Tony Fields, and like some of these backups like Hubbard or Malik Jackson, but I mean, this is their core, right? Like, I mean, the only one that's healthy on this list of their core is Odell, who is listed on the injury report, but he is full. Did you hear what he said today, by the way?
No, I didn't hear what Odell said today.
So apparently somebody asked him about his shoulder injury, and he was like, "Oh, I have the same thing as Baker." And they were like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, I have a torn labrum, and I've been dealing with it for 10 years."
Oh, I mean, I guess that like he got it in like college or something and just never got it like surgically repaired, or
yeah, I don't buy that. How do you let a torn labrum go for 10 years?
Yeah, that seems like Odell just fucking with the media, which I support, but that's funny.
Classic Odell. All right. Anything else jump out to you about the injury report before we jump into some key matchups and X factors?
No, I think we've covered it all, and I'm sure when we talk about the key matchups and X factors, that the injuries will play a part in that too.
Yeah. All right, let's jump right into those key matchups. I'll start us off. I think the key matchup is an obvious one for me. It is the headliner heavyweight fight of the day with Rashawn Slater and Myles Garrett. Of course, we've all been loving on Rashawn Slater, and he's been fantastic. I loved watching the film because Max Crosby took one rep against Rashawn Slater and said, "Nope, I'm going back to the other side." And then he put the clamps on Yannick Ngakoue. So Rashawn Slater is playing at a very high level. Of course, we have not seen him play an elite, like truly top tier edge rusher, and he will in this one. But I'm going to go back to training camp and the way that this team really kind of went out of their way to have Joey Bosa go against Rashawn Slater and in practices. So I think Rashawn Slater is going to handle his business. I'm not going to predict that he's going to completely shut out Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is simply too good for that. But I don't think that we're going to see a game-wrecking kind of game from Myles Garrett unless he goes to the other side against Storm Norton more often than the left side. But I think Rashawn Slater is up for the challenge. I think he'll certainly lose a couple more reps than we've seen him lose to this point, just because Myles Garrett is so good. But if this is kind of a matchup where Myles Garrett gets the best of him early and then it just kind of steamrolls, I think obviously they would be in for a tough challenge. But I do believe that Slater is going to be up for the challenge.
Yeah, I think Slater is going to be up for the challenge of going up against Garrett. My main concern is if Garrett goes to that other side, as we saw Chase Young do, as we saw Micah Parsons do, can Norton handle him? So, I mean, to be fair to Norton, I was going to say, to be fair to Norton, he did have a pretty okay game when it came to Max Crosby. I thought he did pretty well with him, 6 pressures. But like, I think as long as he keeps it around that 5 or 6 range, where, once it gets into 8, 9 pressure territory, that's when I think you start sounding the alarm. But I think after the bad Cowboys game, he's at least, kind of settled into what he's going to be, which is probably he's going to give up 4 or 5 pressures at least. He's going to be dealing with Garrett. But I think at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal as long as they give him the proper assistance and have guys like from strategically. That I think is really what you're going to want to do in this game, particularly with Myles Garrett and the rest of the injuries that the Browns are having on the defensive line. So, my key matchup is really Myles Garrett versus Storm Norton. I know you said Myles Garrett versus Rashawn Slater, but that's really what we're going to get. We're going to get him versus Storm Norton. And I think if he can at least hold his own and not give up too many pressures, that's what really can help the Chargers offensive line. But if he does give up a lot of pressures, that's what's going to hurt him.
Yeah, and to your point, I do think that Storm played okay against Max Crosby for the most part. Max definitely got him on a couple spin moves, got him,
Yeah.
around the corner one time when he hit Justin Herbert's elbow, which caused, the pass that he was throwing to fall short. So Max Crosby played well, and as much shit as we've given him over the past couple of years and shit we've given the Raiders, like Crosby is looking like a true, number one edge rusher. So I do think Norton, if he's going up against Myles Garrett, like you have to double team him. You do not have a choice to like pick and choose and leave him on an island on occasion. You have to double team him because I have no confidence in the world that Storm Norton would be able to hold his own against Myles Garrett. It's one thing to do it on occasion against Crosby and Chase Young and Montez Sweat, but that dude number 95 is just different. And so I think if you're dealing with Jadeveon Clowney, dealing with Doc McKinley, then yeah, I'm cool with it. But if Garrett moves over there, then the Chargers could be in trouble. And if that's the case, you bootleg the opposite direction as much as possible.
So, I mean, there has to be kind of a couple strategies, right? You can just put Rashawn Slater on the other guy and just put all 4 linemen towards Myles Garrett. I think that's one way that you could do it.
Right.
You could also make a trade with the Steelers for Mason Rudolph and just have him, be on the sidelines yelling at Myles Garrett. That's a potential distraction for him. So there's a lot of things that the Chargers can do this week.
Yeah, make that happen. He doesn't have to dress. Just get him on the sideline, man.
Just have him with
just pay him to be a fan for the week.
just have him with the classic Charlie Whitehurst clipboard and just let him look at Myles Garrett.
Goodness sake. Oh man. But in general, I think this is going to be a really fun matchup to watch because the Browns pass rush has kind of been their identity on the defensive line, and they do a fun NASCAR package with they'll put Jadeveon Clowney up against some guards while they take out a defensive tackle with Malik Jackson, rushing from the interior, who you are familiar with from his days in the Eagles. So he's having a bit of a resurgence as well. So the offensive line is going to have their hands full for sure this week. Let's pivot now and talk about some of the X factors in this game. I'll let you start us off. Who is your first X factor of the day for the Chargers?
I think the first X factor that I think of kind of has to be, this is a tough one, but I'm probably going to go. Yeah, I think I'm going to go Michael Davis and, how he matches up, particularly with OBJ or any of the other Browns receivers that he'll be dealing with. My guy, Anthony Schwartz, I'm sure will get some snaps and, he'll probably, he's the fastest receiver on the team, obviously. So, Michael Davis might have to, grab him on a play if, they're sort of thinking of a burner Tyreek shot with him at some point. So, I think which Browns receivers he's matched up with, Demetric Felton has sort of been a problem for the Browns, and Baker just missed him a couple times last game. So I think which wide receivers he's matched up with at which specific times, obviously wrapping up as a tackler in this game. And Michael Davis has been tackling better for sure this season, as we saw in the Raiders game. So I'll say definitely Michael Davis, both in run defense and in pass coverage because of Baker's struggles. I think that he's going to be the guy that sort of has to apply the pressure to the Browns offense this week.
Yeah, and I had a fun time messaging Alex this week because Brandon Staley said that he did extensive homework on Anthony Schwartz leading up to the draft. So, a little bit of a what if scenario there. If Josh Palmer wasn't available in the 3rd round, maybe they would have taken your guy Anthony Schwartz.
Maybe.
I guess we'll never know. So I think my X factor of the day is going to be Forrest Merrill, somebody that I know a lot of Chargers fans are very hyped about. And in his 3 snaps this week, he played very, very well. He had a nasty swing move on the Raiders center, Andre James, which left him eating dirt, which forced the running back, Josh Jacobs, to bounce it and was tackled for a short gain. Then on another play, he ate up a double team, which freed up Kaiser White to go get a tackle for loss. And then on his last snap, he actually split a double team and got his own tackle for loss. So incredible efficiency from Forrest Merrill. I want to see if that is able to continue into, if he gets 10 snaps, what does that look like? Potentially more. And normally I wouldn't be talking about a player with 3 snaps, but Brandon Staley late in the game against the Raiders, they went heavy. And Brandon Staley actually debuted a new front look where he put 4 defensive tackles, the 2 edge rushers, and then 1 linebacker, Kaiser White, behind them. So they had 6 guys up on the line of scrimmage, including Forrest Merrill. So they had essentially, Forrest Merrill and Linval Joseph ahead in between the guards and centers, or center, excuse me. And it worked. Like, that's the play that Forrest Merrill ate up a double team. Kaiser White was able to get a tackle for loss. So I'm curious in this week if they'll do that more often, if Forrest Merrill plays more, because the Browns' rushing attack really is priority number one, in my opinion, for the Chargers defense this week. So I think Forrest Merrill gets him a couple of tackles for loss, make a couple plays, potentially, bring some momentum to this Chargers defense, because they need it, right? Like, I think Jerry Tillery, Christian Covington played really well this week, but we haven't really seen them put it together for a whole game previously. So I think we need to see Forrest Merrill get some more action in there, potentially cause some plays for the Chargers defense.
Yeah, I think this is definitely when Justin Jones got put on IR, like the first set of games that I thought of, thinking that he would miss, when it came to Cleveland and Baltimore. It's not the games that you want to have a weaker run defense for sure. They sort of got away with it against the Raiders last week because obviously Josh Jacobs is not healthy and the Raiders interior line is a mess. The Browns will still be dealing with some interior line issues depending on what happens with J.C. Treader. But, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are unfortunately fully healthy for the Chargers' sake. Yeah. So I think that's going to be definitely a problem to deal with the whole game. And if you want to substitute Forrest Merrill in there a little bit more, if you want to substitute Braden Fajoko a little bit more, who got one snap last game, I definitely think both of those guys probably go up in snaps this week just because of the amount of DTs and the amount of power they'll need on the field. Especially if there ever comes a point in the game where a DT has to come out. Obviously, I think we saw for a brief drive and a half Jerry Tillery come off the field last week. Yeah. So, I think that whatever happens, injuries or not, I think that you're going to have players like Forrest Merrill and Braden Fajoko probably have to play more this week.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we heard, that clip that Brandon Staley spoke a couple of weeks ago about the run game and how important that element is because of the physicality, the nature of the physicality. And I think we'll see that in this game. Like Jerry Tillery, Christian Covington, and Linval Joseph, they dominated the snaps last week. And I think just given, the nature of the opponent this week, I don't expect that to happen again. You're probably hoping that, you can keep your guys fresh a little bit more. Of course, it helped when the Raiders were going 3 and out so much. So I think we'll see, at least Merrill a little bit more. Obviously, I hope Braden Fajoko plays a little bit more too, because I think he is somebody that can make a difference for sure. All right, let's any other matchups or X factors you're kind of focusing in on this week?
No big ones for me. I think the X factor that we have to talk about after last week is obviously how many Chargers fans are going to be in the building. I think that's going to be a big thing this week, much like it has been, unfortunately, every week. They were sort of closer to even with the Cowboys, but I'd like to see a good, crowd win for the Chargers, especially after last week to get all the, taste of the media sucking off the Raiders out of the mouths when it came to their, booing the Chargers out of the tunnel. Can't let that happen this week. So everybody's that's going to be at the game and whoever gets Tyler's tickets, we just gotta show out.
Yeah, and Kyle Brandt, man, I do not like that guy at all. And the backpedaling that he took this week of why do people hate Chargers fans so much? It's like, my guy, you're the one who makes fun of us more than anybody. So anyway, just not a fan of that guy.
You're welcome on the show, though, Shriggs.
Yeah, Peter Schrager, you're good. Michael Robinson, Kay Adams, you're all good to come on whenever you want. But Kyle Brandt, probably never. But yeah, I think this is the first game we'll see a majority of the crowd be Chargers fans. I don't know if it will be huge, but I think if it's 60-40, I think that would be, fantastic to see. If you're not going to this game and you live in Southern California, please buy tickets and go. There are so many tickets available on Twitter that, are up for grabs. So if you're on the fence, go, because I think this is a really, fun matchup overall. Lots of cool storylines. And of course, potentially the first opportunity to have a crowd in the majority of our favor. So if you're on the fence, please buy tickets and go. I will be there. Unfortunately, Tyler will not be there. So if you're wanting to come say hi, we'll be in section 209. I'm definitely happy to chat it up with anyone. So Let's get to
I
some
just
of
want
our.
I just
Go
wanted to
ahead.
say really quickly while we were on the topic of Kyle Brandt. He also has this podcast, 10 Questions on the Ringer, and his guest
Yes,
this week was
it was
Eli
Eli.
Manning. And one of his questions was, "Why didn't you want to go to the Chargers?" So
Yeah,
he added that to his list of anti-Chargers propaganda after the Raiders game. Even after he apologized, he had to go in with Eli Manning.
I know. And Eli trying to say that like, oh, it was my decision. Yeah, no way. No way was it your decision, Eli
Uh,
Manning. That was all your dad. But it was just, yeah, it was not fun. So all right, let's get to some of our bolt prediction this week. I was really excited to see where Tyler would go because he's always provided so much fun
yeah.
with this segment. So my bolt prediction for this matchup, um, let's see. I've given a lot of love to the tight ends. I've given some love to the running backs. So I'm going to go to the receivers. I think we see Josh Palmer score his
Ooh,
first regular season touchdown this week. I think we've seen
that'd be
him
good.
be on the field a little bit more each week. It hasn't really resulted in some targets, but I think with all the attention that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are getting, I think we see Josh Palmer get his first touchdown this week, and I would love to see it.
Yeah, I'd love to see Josh Palmer get his first touchdown, much like we saw it in the preseason against the Rams. It would be really fun for him to, have that kind of game again. Just getting him more involved in general, I think, would be
Yeah.
such a big deal. Just in terms of another weapon that the Chargers can truly throw out there. As far as me for a bold prediction, it's tougher this week. I think last week I said Keenan Allen would have 2 touchdowns and 100 billion yards. Didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surprisingly not. So I probably have to go in a bit of a different direction this week. I'll say that this is going to be a big Jerry Tillery game. I think
Okay.
that, given the, instability of the Browns on the interior with Treader, plus them having the issue at tackle with Wills, I think that allows probably someone to get free because they'll have to still be double covering Bosa either way. So I'll say this is it's a 1.5 sack, 5 pressure game for Jerry Tillery.
Yes, yeah, it's been coming, right? Like we've seen Jerry Tillery
Yeah.
improve over the last couple weeks, and had a great sack last week. So a big game from Tillery would be huge in this matchup for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to these league picks next. This is going to be very interesting to see how I mess this up because I've gone 0-3 twice already. I for whatever reason, I just like I get to these picks and I don't choose the gimmies. I have chosen the gimmies this time. So hopefully that gets me a 3-0 week because I desperately need it. What are the standings for our picks right now, Alex?
So I am in first place at 9-3. Tyler is at 8-4, and then Steven, he's at 3-9. So it's been tough sledding, but it's actually interesting because Tyler started off at 2-1, and me and Steven were both at 1-2. So it's
Yeah,
just that I got to 9-3
brutal.
somehow, and Steven got to 3-9. But that's just how brutal the NFL league-wide picks can be sometimes. But since I am going first this week, I have to take the 2 cupcake games off the table. Give me the Bucks over the Dolphins. Pretty much picking anyone over the Dolphins until Tua gets back, maybe, and maybe even then, I will still pick against the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So I got to go Bucks over the Dolphins. My second pick will be the Pats over the Texans. I think the Pats had a good effort on Sunday Night Football, and the Texans are unfortunately still starting Davis Mills and not Tyrod Taylor. So that's kind of an automatic L for them. For my upset of the week, there's actually quite a few close ones this week, but I went with the London game, and that's going to be the Jets and the Falcons. The Falcons are favored by 2.5, which me and Steven were talking about earlier is kind of surprising given all the guys that they're missing right now, particularly
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley. They'll also be missing Russell Gage this game. And they haven't really figured out how to get Kyle Pitts involved, but maybe this is the week that changes. Still, I was really impressed by what I saw with Zach Wilson and that Jets offense last week. I think they're sort of starting to piece things together. They have a winnable game here against the Falcons, and I just think they've been playing a little bit better than Atlanta has. So I'm going to take the Jets as a 2.5 point dog in London.
Yeah, my guy Elijah Vera Tucker is figuring it out right now. So happy to see that one. So Tyler sent us his picks. Tyler is taking the Ravens over the Colts. The Colts are a mess themselves. He's taking the Packers over the Bengals, and then he's taking the Bears to upset the Raiders. So Tyler has picked. I think this is his third time featuring a Raiders game.
Closeted Raiders fan.
But yeah, I think those are fine picks. So all right, I'll send my picks now. So I'm taking the Titans over the Jags. Thankfully, these guys left me one of the gimmies this week. I think obviously the Jaguars are a freaking mess. Urban Meyer has zero control on that team. Although I would not be surprised if they cover the spread, because I think if Julio Jones and AJ Brown are injured and potentially out, I don't really have confidence that the Titans will move the ball, but I do expect them to win.
What, Steven?
Other than
You don't
that,
expect you don't expect the Jags to grind out a win?
no, I don't. Gosh. Every single week with you or Tyler, man. Oh my gosh. Anyways, all right. So and next after that, I'm taking the Cowboys over the Giants. Cowboys just continue to roll. I don't really trust the Giants defense very much to get any stops. And then my upset of the week, I predicted this in the preseason. So I'm taking the Bills over the Chiefs, similar to the Chargers. I just think that the Bills have too much offense for the Chiefs, which is, a brutally bad defense right now. So I think Bills going to Arrowhead, get a win. Of course, that'd be huge for the Chargers and the rest of the division. Having the Chiefs be 2-3, like how crazy is that? So yeah, those are my picks: Titans over Jags, Cowboys over Giants, and Bills over Chiefs as my upset of the week.
All right, good picks. I would say that Chiefs Bills is on the complete other end of competency compared to Jets Falcons. That'll actually be a fun game to watch.
Yes, that'll be a fun Sunday Night Football matchup for sure. I'm excited to see how many points get scored in that game. It might end up being like Chiefs Rams from back in the day, which is like 52-49 or something. It'd be a lot of fun. All right, let's get to our final score predictions, and we'll wrap it up. Tyler did send his pick for this game as well. He's taking the Chargers over the Browns 23-21. So Alex, what is your score prediction for this game?
Yeah, coming into this one, I sort of expected to see myself taking the Browns, just kind of going off of what I saw from them earlier in the season a little bit, and sort of what my preseason expectation was for that team. But I'm actually going to take the Chargers. I'm a little bit scared right now of the Browns and all the injuries that they have. Like, that just doesn't sit well with me. Obviously, if you get kind of the better version of Baker, I think this is a much, much more even game, maybe even leaning towards the Browns in that one. But I don't think he's particularly healthy and wasn't right against the Vikings at all. Plus, compared to what you're going to be going through with the Chargers and their secondary and the problems they present, I think that the Vikings are actually much easier compared to that. So to me, I think that he's going to still struggle a little bit with how the Chargers have been able to lock receivers down and focus in on some key matchups in these, first four games. So obviously, they haven't, the Chiefs are the record high in the building with 24 points, against the Chargers. So I think that, it's going to be tough for the Browns. Obviously, the thing that the Browns have to lean on is their run game. And if they do well in that regard, maybe the other stuff won't matter as much. But I just see too many red flags in terms of injuries, in terms of how Baker's playing, and in terms of how Kevin Stefanski has gone for it on fourth down a lot, and it hasn't worked because the offensive line is not good enough to work. I saw Henry read off that stat in your guys' interview where I think you've had what's the tackle's name? Sorry, I'm blanking again.
Jedrick Wills.
Jedrick Wills, who's allowed like 3 sacks on fourth downs or 3 pressures on fourth down specifically. So that's kind of going to be crazy to watch. And if the Chargers are a team that's gunning to go for it on 4th and 2, 4th and 1, the Browns will have to match that. They haven't been as great in terms of the situational football. So I think it'll be close either way, but I'm actually going to take the Chargers in this one, 27-24.
Okay, so a little bit more higher scoring than what Tyler is predicting. I think, you're spot on in terms of like the offense, right? The run game scares me a little bit this week. It would have scared me a lot more had we not, seen them improve over the last couple games.
Yeah.
I think Drew Tranquil's presence really helps them in this game. So I think it'll be low scoring because I think the Browns are going to kind of, grind out the clock with their running attack. We've seen the Chargers have 10, 12 play drives. So I'm not expecting like a ton of possessions. I'm not expecting a ton of points. But I just think that the edge that Justin Herbert is providing this team is significantly greater than what Baker Mayfield is, even if he bounces back this week, which I don't think he'll be as bad as he was against the Vikings. I do expect him to be better.
Yeah.
But, he's not playing well. Now he's injured, so I'm not expecting him to be great. Jarvis Landry is out. Potentially David Njoku is out. So the Browns offense is definitely not at full speed. And because of that, I think that's enough for me to pick the Chargers. I think the score is where it kind of comes into play with all these injuries that the Browns are dealing with. I think, if Greg Newsome were playing and Denzel Ward were healthy and Jedrick Wills were healthy, I think you could maybe go a little bit closer. But because all of those players are not, I'm going to go with the Chargers 23 over the Browns 17.
It's a big win. Not quite 20 points, but,
I really would have been interested to hear Tyler's bold prediction today because I think he's gone so bold in some of these. It's been a lot of fun. But yeah, this is a great matchup. I'm really excited to see all these, unique battles. This is going to be a big test for Michael Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. getting to go up against Odell Beckham. Rashawn Slater gets to go against Myles Garrett. So a lot of fun individual battles. And I think both of these teams are, potential contenders down the road. So this is a big tiebreaker game as well because you never know what pops up down the road in terms of tiebreakers and seedings for the playoffs.
For sure. And it was crazy to look at the playoff picture that the NFL put out this week and the Bengals are the 2 seed. I was just like, that's how you know it's week 4, baby.
I know. So funny. They're definitely going to come back down to earth eventually. But I do think the Browns are, kind of the class of that division. And they've got a tough schedule coming up because they play the Chargers this week and then the Cardinals next week after that. And then they they host the Broncos. So tough 3-game stretch for the Browns in the coming weeks.
And I assume they still have to play the Ravens twice. I don't think they've played them this year yet, right?
No, they haven't. So they play Big Ben and the Steelers in a few weeks, and then they play the Ravens on Thanksgiving weekend and then on December 12th. So they play the Ravens twice in the span of 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's not going to be fun for them. I don't think so.
I hate when the NFL does that. Like spread these division games out some more, please.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, any final thoughts before we head out for today, man?
No, not too many final thoughts. Obviously, just hoping for the best for Tyler's family, and I think that we're all with him as Bolt fam, and just hoping that all works out as best as it can. And no, that's all I really got to say. Just hoping for a great game this week, and raise up because we're in the playoffs, baby. That's all I gotta say.
Raise up.
Yeah, it's the Rays,
Oh, the Rays. Okay. I thought you meant like Rays, like as in RAISE. I was confused.
No.
I'm not in tune with the baseball scene right now, so I apologize. But yeah, shout out to Tyler's grandpa. He took the time to tune into our live stream a couple of weeks ago, and he's not doing so hot. So I hope everything goes smoothly there, and obviously wishing him the best for the Shun family. He's been very kind to us in our live streams the last few weeks. They're a great family. I had the pleasure to meet Tyler's parents at the Cowboys game. Some great people for sure. Wishing them nothing but the best. So also want to give a shout out to Darius Butler, Henry Ettinger, and Gilbert Manzano for joining me this week. I did 3 interviews on Wednesday. So hopefully you guys enjoyed those. If you missed them, go check them out. They're available on YouTube or whatever podcast platform of your choosing is. This has been the Guilty as Charged podcast, and we will see you guys next time.